Welcome to the Seven Figure Fundraising Podcast, the podcast where we discuss specific tactics and strategies to grow your nonprofit. I'm your host, Trevor Bragdon, and today I have a great guest I'm excited to share with you. It's Jared Musgrove, and he leads the organization Beta Upsilon Chi, or BYX, known as BYX, which is a Christian fraternity that's located at 38 different campuses around America. Welcome, Jared.
Hey, always love hanging out with you, Trevor. Fun to be on.
Well, I'm glad you could be on because we're going to spend today talking about how do you find new donors with a podcast. But before we jump in, just want to give you a quick, just some background about Jared because he's a humble guy. He's not going to brag about himself here. But Jared's been involved in ministry, working for churches for over 2 decades and took over running BYX. He was an alumni of the BYX fraternity from his years at Oklahoma University when he started in 2001. And he runs, and what we're focused on today, the podcast Man to Men, which has had over 100 episodes. And he's really interviewed some amazing people from NFL players to church pastors to famous musicians. And we're going to discuss and dive into what does it take as a nonprofit leader to create a podcast? How do you sustain the podcast over time, like through those dark years or dark times when, maybe you're not getting as many downloads as you hoped? And then what are some really tactical things and what happens when you have a successful podcast and how that contributes to your fundraising? And then the last bit we're going to dive into is if you don't have the time or bandwidth right now to start a podcast, what are some other strategies for you as a nonprofit leader to use podcasts to get your message out, but also to attract new donors? So hopefully, Jared, we can deliver on all of that in the next 45 minutes or so.
Let's give it a go.
Excellent. Well, Jared, we got to know each other last fall through a training that we did in Texas, and I was really impressed with what you guys are doing at BYX with the fraternity, because most people don't think Christian and fraternity. So can you just tell us a little bit about them yourself and how you got involved?
You teed it up nicely. I joke with people, probably need to find a better example, but I kind of walk into meetings with 2 hand grenades and 2 really polarizing terms, Christian and fraternity. And I just put them together and try to explain to someone why this works and why it has expanded across the country for 41 years. We are a social fraternity, currently approaching 40 major campuses nationwide. We just celebrated our 40th anniversary in 2025. And we are also the nation's largest Christian fraternity, which means that we are not just a social fraternity on a college campus. We do all of that. You'll see BYX involved in homecoming, winning best IFC chapter, participating in song contests, all the stuff you think that frats do, but we're going to take Jesus with us. And what that means is that our identity as Christian believers is distinctive to how we do fraternity. That does play out in our morality, in and around the fraternity, as far as how we interact with the Greek community on every campus, how we interact with the campus community, and even beyond as our alumni graduate and go out. It's been, next to the church, Trevor, the organization of my life. I joined up at University of Oklahoma in 2001, wasn't looking for a frat because why would I do that? For guys of our generation, maybe a little older, your idea of frat probably comes from like the TNT version, I hope, of Animal House, where you see clips of that and you're like, man, those guys are fools. I can't be a part of that as a Christian. But then for the guys that are younger than us, even now, just landing on college, they're not so much familiar with Jim Belushi, but they're familiar with the headlines that they see pretty much on repeat, or the things they see on socials, which is fraternities and sororities, Greek systems are toxic. They're places of alcohol abuse, just terrible things happening. And yet BYX is going to be an alternative to that current fraternal lifestyle. It was for me. And that's why I joined up, is because I wanted a group of guys to go with and to grow with as far as being a Christ follower. I'm the leader and the man and the husband and the father I am today, largely because of God using BYX in my life. So as you can tell, I can go on, but that's a little bit of my origin story and why I've been involved with the fraternity nationally for 25 years now.
That's amazing. And so what are some of the examples of universities where you guys have chapters?
Our founding chapter was at the University of Texas. That's in 1985. It burns my tongue a little bit sometimes as a Sooner to admit that, but that's our genesis. And for those first probably 12 to 15 years, BYX was just among major Texas universities. Think like TCU, Texas A&M, Texas State, Texas Tech, SMU, Baylor, just kind of grew through the state there. And I think a lot of the guys just thought it would stop at the state of Texas. But, and this is where I get to be a little proud, the University of Oklahoma chapter in 2000 was the first outside the state of Texas and really was a turning point for our organization in national growth. That was kind of the moment that we said, oh, this is going to go beyond just one state. This is going to be a national fraternity. And part of what I really enjoyed, in addition to just getting to be a meaningful part of what was happening at OU, was that we would get to plant other chapters. In my time there as a member and an officer, we got to be part of planting chapters at University of Arkansas, Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, and Georgia. Oh, and can't forget little brother in the state, Oklahoma State. So that just wet my whistle and just saw that, man, this is a movement and maybe the most effective discipleship engine that I've seen for college men and experienced myself. So I couldn't get enough of it. I rolled onto our national staff for a couple of years after college in kind of an entry-level role, did that, then entered the pastoral ministry for the last 20 years, served on our board of directors really that entire time. And then in April of 22, started having discussions about what would it look like for me to roll back on in an executive role and really begin to take and steward this vision of BYX, of Christian fraternity, to even more universities across the country.
That's amazing. Well, and you guys are doing great work. It's amazing too that like in those early years, we were commenting before the show how we both started college in fall 2001
Yep.
and how you were like involved with some of that initial expansion, and now you're getting to do it, 2 decades later, big part of it. That's really cool.
Yeah, the Lord's so kind, and He gives us sometimes just these little completions of circles or just these continuations. And BYX has been a major one in my life.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, one of the strategies that you've used really successfully since you took over and started shifting, I do think there's a little bit of a warning in there. Sometimes if you're really good on a board, they're going to bring you in and help you run the organization. So maybe that's a little word of warning. Just kidding. But one of the strategies you've used really well is growing your podcast, the Man to Men podcast. You guys have close to 120 episodes now. You've interviewed people like NFL players like Benjamin Watson. You've had very famous Christian singers, Stephen Curtis Chapman. You've had mega church pastors. You've had famous book authors. Like you've had the gamut. And then you also interview, 18, 21-year-old men who are part of the chapters. So what's interesting is like, it's all really good content and like they're interesting in like the different aspects, but you've really found something that works well. And it's from what the conversations we've had, it's added to your donors. So can you just talk to us about first the genesis of how you started the podcast? Because I think for a lot of nonprofits, they either try one, they do 3 or 4 episodes, then it kind of fizzles because it takes an enormous amount of time. And then how you really got traction from the start to, where it is now.
I will say that even when I was a board member, here's a key. If you're a board member who wants to think more about operations than maybe like big picture strategy for 2 meetings a year, you might want to apply for a staff job. So that's where I found myself. And one of those operative things was I just thought, man, we've got a great story to tell. We are now the 24th largest fraternity in the country.
Wow.
That's in spite of any, growth plans we had. Like that's been the Lord just continuing to grow BYX. And that was new this year. And we've got something to steward. And we were, like most fraternities, largely pretty insular. I think grateful for the growth we'd seen, but we were not super proactive. One of the things I was passionate about was getting out and telling more of our story. And you can only have so many coffees and lunch meetings a week or a month, and even then, sometimes we're limited just by time and distance. We were talking earlier, and it just took me a week to go out and visit about 3 or 4 donors that are on the East Coast. I mean, that's a huge investment of time and attention and money and travel. I'm away from family. So, what's a way that we can do that in a way that is more shareable with everybody where they are, which is on their phone? Originally, our CEO, David Pearson, and I were both serving on the board together. We both rolled off and into exec roles together. And one of his ideas was, hey, can we come up with the BYX library? These would be like curated books that we would send our donors as like a thank you. We want, we are spiritual men. We want to continue to invest in you spiritually, even if it's just through this trusted resource. And what we found out pretty quickly is that is going to be a major lift of just cost, time, shipping. We can't bite that off.
A book's a to-do.
That's right.
It's something. It's 9-10 hours of your life you're asking someone to commit to.
That's right. If you're in my study and if you can see it right now, it's like I love the printed word. I came up as a journalist, and some of that was through a love of the printed paper. Heck, I still get my weekend edition of the Wall Street Journal just because I like holding it. So I'm like an old man that way. I do digital through the week, but the weekend I can't let go of that one. But I also love this new format we've got called podcast, which is really just radio. And I'm also trained in that because I trained in journalism and in broadcast. And I learned that I probably don't have the face to be on TV, but I enjoyed radio a lot. And so I picked up some of those skills and always kind of thought, man, this would be a great medium to share more stories about what BYX is doing. And it's not going to cost us tens of thousands of dollars a year. And it's something that's instantly shareable. So how can we format a show that's sustainable, that will also be a benefit to our current collegiate members, our alumni members, our parents, but even beyond that, our donor base, and even just those who may be interested in what BYX is doing, like churches or other Christian nonprofits or just Christians in general. So that was the genesis of the show. It came together pretty quickly. And as we were batting around ideas, we just came up with Man to Men, the idea that, hey, we're going to have, we have had some women on the show, but largely we have a man speaking to other men. That's our audience. But also to show that growth. It's like, hey, BYX takes these young men and turns them into mature men of Christ. So we wanted that transition in there. And that's really how we started back in, it would have been April or May of 2023. Or 24, sorry. Age
24. Okay, so almost 2 years we're coming up on.
Yes.
That's amazing. So did you guys have any, when you're first starting with you have the idea, what's interesting is you have a wide category of men, you're 18 all the way to 60, 70, donors tend to be, in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. So that's a wide net to be casting. So how did you think about what's relevant to an 18-year-old, which is whose BYX serves, 18 to 24, 23, but also relevant to somebody who's in his 40s or someone who's in his 60s.
Yeah. That was the fun of it, because a lot of my background is in spiritual formation, men's spiritual formation, counseling. So I sat with a lot of men in 20 years of both BYX and also just local church ministry. And so I kind of had this cross-section in my head of, hey, it doesn't matter if you're 18 or 68. This is something a guy's thinking about or interested in. And so I just started putting some of those things down. And then I started reaching out across my ministry network to just see, hey, who could we get on, in a sense? So I used a lot of the networking from, it's not really my past life, but my pastoral life, the one where I got paid to be a pastor. And just seems like, hey, who would want to join me on here? I knew that we had some board members and some friends of BYX that also just had connections. And you know what, man? I'm going to butcher a little bit of Jesus's words here, but you have not because you ask not. So We asked. We just went out there and asked. And I was pleasantly surprised at the amount, especially of early guests that just said, yeah, I'd love to come on. The key is that find people who are passionate about what they do and invite them on to talk about the thing they love. Someone will like it.
Oh, that's interesting.
We use an audio journal format, which I chose. It's kind of a subset of the show's title, an audio journal. The reason I chose that is because our bread and butter is going to be these interviews that we do with just different thought leaders from different just walks of life. But then, as you mentioned, we also have a semi-regular feature called Collegiate Leaders, where we interview BYX guys. These are men who are leading on college campuses right now. So in a sense, that's our man on the street interview, if you will.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that would appeal to any guy who's listening in. That could be a high school guy who's thinking about BYX and just finds the podcast and wants to listen to his, in I think by the time you post this, we'll have had some guys on from University of Tennessee, Oklahoma, Georgia, Vanderbilt. It's like, hey, what are these guys into? And they'll hear someone that sounds like them. And for those of us that are no longer part of the college experience, I think you're going to be really inspired by these guys and actually have a lot of hope. So we can offer that. We've done devotionals and things like that. So that can help on the content side, is just have a couple of vectors that you can come in just in case, you can't sign on the guests immediately, or maybe you need a little break, you need to build in some padding, but still want to stay regular. That kind of format really helps.
I really like that. I haven't heard of like audio journal. Is there like a specific definition for that?
No, I came up with it.
Oh, okay.
As far as I know. There's something very old. It's called the Mars Hill Audio Journal. And it used to be, it's kind of like for theology nerds, and you had to order it and it was on CD.
Oh, okay. Wow. Old school.
Think like podcast on CD. And they would just, it's almost like an audio magazine, if you will. So when you look at the man-to-men feed, that's kind of what I want you to see is we've got, if you think about an old school print magazine, they've got the cover story, but inside they've also got a lot of little feature articles. Some are regular, some are one-offs. That's what we want to provide.
That's a really clever way of looking at it. Because I would say like that's what I did when I started like listening to your podcast. I wanted to listen to the young men on there because I just hear how they describe it.
Exactly.
And it's clever for two reasons. One, like your donors that listen to it can actually hear from the people that they're helping. They're supporting,
yes.
And they can hear these guys and sound like great guys. Like some of them you're like, oh, I actually would want to hire you.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're just like, oh, that's like encouraging. There's people like that in the world. And like you read all the negative stuff about, the college age. I don't know what gen they call it now. But like, is it Gen Alpha?
I think we're still at the tail end of Z going to college. I know Alpha's coming up. I think we both have 15, 16-year-old sons. I think they are the last of Gen Z.
Oh, last of Gen Z. Okay.
Yeah. And then I think my 11, almost 12-year-old is leading edge on Alpha.
Okay. All right. So they're right in that in-between band. So they're great episodes. And so I think it's clever having that because then you don't have to have the same theme over and over again and get kind of stuck in one venue. Yes. But there's interesting things. So when you guys started and you started asking, I love that line about, you have not because you ask not. How many guests had you sort of queued up ahead of time?
So we premiered in late April, early May of 2024. I started recording that February.
Okay.
Because I knew, and this is just from my background, but pro tip, guys, if you're going to do this, have episodes in the can before you begin. I knew that some guys can do this. I doubt for most of us, podcasting is not going to be our day job. And I also knew we're not going to be a breaking news podcast. This is something where in the journal format, we're trying to create something that you can listen to it the day it releases, but it would also still be pretty fresh. This is the goal. It would still be pretty fresh for a man who's signing on 3 years later and just scrolling down there or maybe searching for something in, his Spotify or his Apple podcast app, and he finds us and it would still be fresh. So we're trying to do some timeless content. That gives us a little time to build that. And we banked up, I want to say 5 to 7 episodes before we premiered. And wow. in that first year, I knew just looking at it and exactly what you said, a lot of nonprofits start a podcast. They don't continue it. And it's just kind of a bummer because people will look at that. I mean, you want to talk about what you train guys to do, which is fundraising, which is people are looking for little signs that they can trust you. If they look at your podcast, can they trust you to have episodes out on a regular basis? That's important. I was sitting with a major donor for us just last week, great friend, and I was just telling him about our podcast. And he goes, oh, really? He did what everybody always does. They pick up their phone immediately and they look it up. And it's always this reaction. Oh, like you've got over 100 episodes. What he's saying is, you've been faithful with this. And we have been, by God's grace. We can also be faithful with your dollars, with your partnership. It's just sending little signals like that he who's faithful with little can be faithful with much. And to most, a podcast is a little thing. You and I both know what goes into production of it. And we can go that route a little later. But that's the main thing, is have a plan. The gold standard in podcasting is weekly. We did that for most of the first year or 18 months, and I knew that was not sustainable long term. But because I wanted to say, you can trust us to show up, it was important to get that episode count out there and up pretty quickly. Now, we didn't just do junk episodes, but man, I worked overtime because I want this to be something to where it's our Bucks library. You can go here and you can see this is what the Men of Bucks are up to. This is what they do. Much like you when you first looked at it, much like our donors when they first look at it, our parents are checking us out as well. You know, we have new parents whose sons join Bucks every single fall and spring. I know they're checking us out. I want them to see that they can trust Bucks, and I want them to see the kind of content that we're curating, not just for college men, but for men across the country at universities, in their churches. That's our goal. That's our goal, and that's where we started.
Yeah, I love that. I love the framing on it, like thinking through like here's what people are going to do when they hear about it. They're going to physically take out the phone. Let's make it impressive. Let's make sure it's high quality. Like the content's good, but also we have to be in this rhythm for 18 plus months or so and be serious about it.
Yes.
Making me feel a little convicted about my very spotty episodic 7-figure podcast release. But I'm going to give you a chance to help out with that at the end. So don't worry. Because we definitely are not weekly and definitely not on a consistent schedule.
And let me finish that thought. The gold standard in podcasting is weekly, but second best would be biweekly, which is what we're doing right now on Man to Man. Let me just tell you, Trevor, that is so much more sustainable.
Yeah.
It really is.
50% less.
Yeah. But what we've done and where you can be strategic, again, pro tip guys, is build your episode count early on when you got the energy or when you have an opportunity. Maybe it's in the summer. Maybe you go biweekly or monthly during the year, but you know your schedule. Particularly, I know we're talking with a lot of fundraisers, development, advancement people here. You kind of know when your big times are, where you're out and about. And that's one thing that you got to think through, because I travel a lot too for my job. I can't really record. I don't have all of my equipment
so hard on the road
going with me. Yeah. So it's like even this recording, we scheduled this weeks ago around both of us traveling.
Right. Yeah. It took a couple weeks.
Yeah. And so even that is an investment in quality. I don't just want to throw something out there that I recorded on my MacBook speaker in a hotel room.
Right.
I want this to sound great. I want this to be where we're both on point. We're not distracted. So it was worth the time to put in to design it. So we release twice a month. We might have a special series this summer where we go somewhat weekly, but that's been our gold standard, and that works really well for us. I also think too, with our format, we push about 30, 45, sometimes hour-long episodes. What I've learned too about our audience, and you want to listen to your audience, how are they digesting, is that a lot of our guys, both in college and otherwise, were listening to the podcast, that length of time in several sittings. So I want to give them time in those 2 weeks to digest what we're putting out, to find it, to listen in on it. And I'm finding too, to paraphrase the author of Ecclesiastes, of the making of many podcasts, there is no end. So I keep adding some too, and they're ones I really enjoy, but my listening habits have changed. So sometimes even just spreading it out gives your audience more time to find and to digest the content you're putting out.
Well, and it's one of these things too with podcast is like your commitment to excellence is representative of the donors, the listeners, your Bucks members, but it's also such a personal medium because most of the time we listen to podcasts on our headphones or our iPods or however, maybe in the car, but it's usually a one-on-one connection. Very rarely are you blasting a podcast through your house. Right. So how do you think that affects the way you've seen donor growth through the podcast?
I think it does help donors connect to what we're doing. Particularly, we have 40 years worth of alumni in Bucks, and not every guy has just read every single newsletter we've ever sent out and it is read in. We still have alumni who we think we've communicated just all over the place the last 2 years about this, but they're still discovering us. It helps them feel that they can check in. I think having one host is really important. I think just having that continued voice. Unfortunately for Bucks, it's me, for better, for worse.
You do have a radio voice, though.
Well, thank you. Like I said, I've got the face for radio. So signing on every time, I just know, even when I repeat that intro or that outro, you can trust that. And think about your favorite podcasts. You can probably do the same. You can repeat the intro and outro on all of your favorite podcasts. That builds trust. Those are just little things that the listener begins to invite into their listening experience or their day. I know most guys are not sitting down with us, again, blasting it through their house. They're probably listening to podcasts the way you and I do, which is I've got my lineup every morning that when I hit the shower, I've got this little ledge, maybe TMI, but it's like I know which one I'm going to hit. I set it up on this little ledge so it didn't get damaged, and I start listening. And I listen throughout my day. I've got different podcasts that I like to listen to when I work out. Some are informative, some are just for fun, but you develop those habits. And if Man to Men can be a part of our donors' habits, then that's just a gift we can give them. And that's the attitude. We don't want to be a fraternity that's secretive and, completely insular. This is a gift Bucks can give other Christian men, whether they've been a part of us or not. We want to be a fraternity that gives. And this is a small way we can do that.
So when you talk to a donor who's a regular listener to the podcast, how is the relationship different? Like you go in, you're going to pitch them, for renewing this year, say, and they're a regular listener versus a donor who's not. Talk to me about how that's different.
As I handle most of those conversations for us, it's helpful that they've just heard me before. I don't think I'm particularly scintillating. I joke with our guys. It's like, man, if you find nothing else on Man to Man, you're going to find an amazing sleep aid when I talk. So I've got kind of this low, baritone kind of voice. If it goes on for too long, it can be a little too soothing. So I'm aware of that. I would rather be the guy asking the questions than answering them. Some of your listeners may have nodded off already, Trevor, which is great because they'll finish the episode.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's true.
Yeah. Or maybe they'll come back to it. But I have found that donors have more of a recognition and I hope a trust for me as they sign on. It's a familiar voice. If they've checked out any of our YouTube clips or anything on socials, where we've clipped an episode or something, I'm not a brand new person to them. That does help initially with some trust because they may feel that they know me a little bit, or at least I'm familiar to them. Maybe they didn't listen to every episode, but they might have found one or two that they really liked. And that's what I'm finding with most donors is that they're either regular listeners or they're like, oh yeah. In fact, I met with one of our alumni today who was like, oh yeah, this episode, someone sent me this episode and I really loved it. That's trust. Yeah. That's an invitation.
And it's a great little commonality too. Like you can talk about it initially before you're getting into the meat of the meeting.
Exactly. You mentioned we had Stephen Curtis Chapman on a while back, and that was just through some networking. And again, you got to ask. I grew up with Stephen. And you'll hear me geek out a little bit on that podcast. But I'm recognizing most of our collegiate guys may or may not know who that is because he's kind of the grandfather of Christian music at this point. But I had guys who really resonated with that interview. And, that helped a lot. That's a point of commonality that immediately ingratiates a conversation starter as we're meeting in person, or maybe I'm calling them over the phone. So I try to think about that with guests too, as far as who can kind of cross-generationally relate with our different listeners and just our different, stakeholders and guys who may be, tuning in for the first time.
So walk me through that, because this brings up an interesting point. Like when we did the intro, I talked about you had NFL players, you had famous musicians, Stephen Curtis Chapman, like these people who, if you're in the Christian music space, you've heard of him before. Sure. You probably recognize a bunch of his songs or you've listened to it. So it adds this incredible level of credibility to the organization, to you when you do this. But how do you go through the mechanics of how you book these guests, if you don't mind sharing a little bit of this detail? Because you've talked about you don't get if you don't ask, but what does an ask look like?
So I'll take you back to the genesis. I started thinking through, and I think you mentioned it at the top of the podcast, some of it is just stewarding your own story and your own network to begin, or maybe that of your organization, because Bucks has been around for 40 years. We have got men all over the country at this point. So I started thinking through that network. I started thinking through my ministry relationships. That's just the world I come from. And I'm thinking so John Tyson was one of our first episodes. I know a lot of guys listen to him. He's got a book on men coming out. I think it was April of 24. So I thought, I'm going to reach out and just see if he wants to come on and talk about the book. That's a key. Like, hey, is there something new they're doing? Stephen Curtis Chapman was taking his Speechless album out on a 25th anniversary tour. So is there a guest you want to have on, and do they have something coming up that they'd like to promote? That just helps everybody.
Yep. Yeah, they have a natural hook. That's great.
Yeah, we had Albert Mohler from a very popular podcast called The Briefing. A lot of our guys listen to that one. He's president at Southern Seminary. I'm an alum there. That's where I did my doctorate. So there's some connection there. But I wanted to talk to him about his leadership book, which came out a long time ago, but he had a new edition coming out at the time we did. So like find the key. It won't always be a publisher or a musician, but just find somebody who wants to talk about their thing. I bet they'll come on your podcast. Because here's also the key that I learned in journalism school. People love to talk about themselves.
Yeah, that's really true.
That's just human.
Yeah, and but you're smart in that you're finding the thing they love to talk about and ask them questions about that. Because sometimes you get interviews when you're doing a podcast, and most people aren't media trained. They're not comfortable, like freeze up a little on camera. You have a great pre-interview, and then you get them talking, and it's just, it's not bad, but they're just not in their natural element. Like, they would be much more engaging if you were one-on-one, just recording the conversation.
Yeah.
But the tension of, this sort of setup gets them a little stage fright or something. So by picking people who, you have a book, so you've thought a lot about the concept or the content. You have a book, you're coming out again, an older book that you want to talk about. They still probably remember a lot of the details, so they can talk about it. Or they have something they're really passionate about. Like, I love that. Like, if they're excellent at something, it's because they sweat the details and really care about, how it works and can talk about it in a cool way.
Yeah. And so I'm thinking about the guests, but I'm also thinking about our listeners. Is this of value to our listener base? I tell everybody, it's like, we've got some guys that listen to every episode of Man to Man. My main goal, and I think our goal as an organization, is that we just want to keep creating something that you can discover and will be helpful to you. If it's one episode or interview we did, that's great.
Yeah.
If you find 5 of them interesting, that's awesome too. Some of you guys listen to all of them, and bless you for it.
Right.
I'm there for all of them. And some of what helps as a podcaster, and I think just even as a good human, and especially as a development person, is you've got to be curious. You've got to have a natural, but also cultivate a curiosity about people and learn to ask them human questions. Like, find the thing that connects us. And that's going to be really interesting. We say content, but that will be very interesting and connect on a deeper level as people listen. As you said, it's an intimate space. So you want to ask questions that both give a gift and also maybe an insight.
What's interesting too is that mix of very focused on what the person loves or in their topic of expertise, but then also bringing out the human side. I was thinking when you were doing that with our interview earlier, was I should probably incorporate something more like that in ours, because it's good to have both the business and a little bit of interesting.
Mixed
in.
When I was a journalist and I thought that was going to be my career, I really thought I wanted to be a feature writer. Those little human stories, that we all like reading, and like someone's going to clip and put on the refrigerator. Again, I'm showing, my journalism background, or maybe like send to someone now. So I've always been really interested in humans in general. And I think most people are. We just kind of get to bring some of that to the fore. And what that does is it shows you're a curious person. If you're sending your podcast to a donor or a prospect, that shows that you care. I think that's so important.
Right. Well, and you have this advantage, like when you lead a nonprofit, like people will go out of their way to be helpful often.
Yes.
So like if you're curious, you can reach out and they get people who might be, batting a little out of your league, perhaps, and that maybe you're not quite a big enough podcast to get some of the names you get, but you get because you're presenting well, but you're also, they want to do a favor to a nonprofit.
Yes.
But I think on the flip side of that is, if you're running a nonprofit, you meet some really cool people. The people you help, the people on your board, the people involved. So you actually, by being curious, you probably have more guests that you could interview. And I'm talking about not you specifically, but as nonprofit leaders,
you see it.
You could interview and bring out their story and be fascinating.
I think if we stewarded our networks a little better as nonprofit leaders, we would be amazed. It's not even 6 degrees of connections that we have. Sometimes it's just 1, 2, or 3 degrees. And I have found most people really do want to be helpful, and they love helping nonprofits. That's how we've gotten some of the guests we've gotten. So you're right on. That's how it works.
So moving along, like we've talked about how to get guests. We've talked about the specifics like prepping, like actually doing the work. Like this isn't a, fake thing that you throw into chat and then show up and hope AI will do it for you and save the day. You have to do the homework just like in school, just like in college, right? There's no test banks probably at a BYX fraternity that students can get like they were at some of the ones where I went to college.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to me a little bit about like how has the podcast led to actual donations? Because this topic being about finding new donors, how has it led to people coming in and becoming supporters of BYX?
Yeah, I've got several examples of that. What's fun about a podcast is you don't always know who it's reaching. That actually is really fun because it can impact someone that maybe never knew who you were. I've got 3 or 4 individuals in mind right now, didn't even know who we are, and they just become more aligned with the heart of your organization because it's some of their heart too. And that leads to a conversation, and that leads to, hey, how can I help you guys? We love what you do. I've got a couple of donors, Trevor, that they donate because of the podcast. They're like, hey, this helps me in my spiritual life. I've got a couple of donors that, hey, we use this in our men's group at church. And so again, we want to be a fraternity that gives, and you're going to find more friends and partners that are saying, hey, you've done this for me. I want to help you. And isn't that the way it should be within the kingdom of God? It's truly like an Acts 2 reality, just now happening over a podcast. And it provides an incredible level of connection. And I have found increasing donations, builds that trust, allows, that voice, the voice of, in our case, the fraternity, to reach more people than we would otherwise.
That's amazing. Well, in one, like people might be thinking, you listen to this, like, I don't have time to start a podcast right now. Sure. Like all the things they have, like they have the next 2 quarters, like kind of jammed packed full of stuff. Let's talk a little bit about appearing on podcasts, because podcasts work both ways. You can go on someone else's podcast, be compelling, be interesting, and still have donors who find out about your work and start giving. So what are some tips on being a good guest, but also finding good places where, prospective donors might be, that it's worth interviewing on?
Yeah. I mean, being a good guest is a lot like being a good interviewer. Just be curious, but it's also a lot of what you guys teach at 7 Figure. And this is a true pitch. Like you guys teach storytelling and, honing in your message to be interesting and compelling. Take all of that with you into the podcast space. It's a perfect space for it. You will probably reach more people than you would at, say, the gala or the donor dinner in someone's house, certainly. And this can go out to hundreds of people, but it also lasts. So think about that. If you get the opportunity or you're booked on a podcast or you're trying to get booked on podcasts, work your pitch. Like make sure you know what you're going to say, because the thing lives forever, and that can be a good thing. You want it to be something that, hey, this exists now out there on the internet, and I can share it so easily with someone's phone. Oh, you want to know more about our organization? Hey, here's our director or our XD or our CEO on this podcast. You should listen to this. And they probably will, because it came from you and it's in their personal text thread with you. It's how your board, your donors, all of your constituents can more easily share things. Like, so for instance, what we're doing right here, I'm going to share this with some people because I'll be really candid. Not everybody on our board understood why we were doing this.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Why you're spending on it. Oh, fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of other members of boards and maybe some XDs and other people who run nonprofits, churches, whatever it may be, who go, why would you waste your time on a podcast? I think this is why we spend time on it. And it is an investment for us that we've counted the cost, we've made it, and we are seeing real returns on it, both in spiritual conversations, both in connection, and then also in some increased donations and some increased trust of the organization. Those are just reasons I would say maybe you can't start right now, but have a plan. This is an incredible medium to be able to reach existing and prospect donors that you may not know yet, but they'll get to know you through being a guest or starting your own podcast. You had asked about how do you book yourself on different podcasts. I think you said it in the intro. I'm a horrible self-promoter. I don't mind promoting bucks. As people have found Man to Men, I've done a couple of little guest spots here and there, but I would just say find podcasts that you enjoy that have some sort of interview format. And I would say write them up a pitch. I think that's fine. People pitch me all the time, and I've taken some of them, and a few of them I'm going like, oh, that's probably not for us, but thank you. Believe me, what you're worried about in podcasts is what every podcaster is thinking about, unless they're, the Kelseys or Joe Rogan. How am I going to create more content?
Right. Yeah.
Like, how do I get more guests? They would probably love to have you give them a great pitch. This is who I am. This is who we are. This is what we do. This is how it intersects with your audience. And man, they're sitting there going, oh, good, another episode. So, I mean, yeah.
Well, industry, if you run a podcast, you get all these garbage pitches that are like these AI spam bot stuff that comes in. You're like, delete, 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 delete. And you just get a feel for it. And then when a real pitch comes in, you're like, oh, this is a real human. And,
yeah.
And you usually respond, like, even if it's not a fit, you're like, hey, thanks for writing. Good luck with what you're doing. Doesn't really fit in our genre or whatever. Yeah. We had a nonprofit leader we work with who did this strategy, started about 18 months ago, appearing on podcasts. They didn't really have enough, they felt, with what they were doing to do their own podcast, but they thought of like, here's a hook that's valuable to a group of people. And they also looked at what were the podcasts their existing donors looked at, and went and got booked on, I think it was a half dozen, maybe 10 podcasts. And one of the appearances resulted in a 6-figure donation that was brand new, like someone they'd never met, sent in. Now they've established a relationship since then. But you just, to your point, you do not know who's listening and what's going to happen, because it lives out there. And if you have evergreen content, like you're not talking about, some topical thing in the news, you're talking about something that's longer term. They could listen to it 3 years from now and connect with your organization for the first time.
Yeah. I mean, dude, you're persuasively pitching me as like, man, I got to go pitch some more podcasts.
Yeah, seriously, because it's interesting. And what they did successfully was they just thought of what's a hook that what's one little thing we're doing that really appeals to this host and their audience, and what's our unique twist?
Absolutely.
We talk about this in the class, and not to monopolize for a second, but when you're selling something old, you need to think of like, how do we make it new and fresh? What's the new twist on an old thing? But when you have something new, it's like, okay, can we talk about it in a way that will make it feel safe or interesting to another group of people? So just think about what's the framing on the work you're doing, and who would love to have you on?
Yes, that's it exactly.
Okay, so we're getting close to the close here. You've had a lot of good feedback on podcast, and my podcast with the 7-Figure Podcast has been a little spotty in our episode.
I'm a subscriber.
Well, I know that we talked about this, and when you were in the class talking about podcasts, you jumped in and were giving some feedback. So I gave you feedback on your pitch. You were very receptive, great at getting coached. So I'm going to turn the tables, let you give me some feedback. What could we be doing better with the 7-Figure Podcast to improve it? And also, most importantly, get this information out to more nonprofit leaders so they can get better at fundraising.
Totally. I'd find your rhythm, man. Like what's the rhythm that works for you? I know you, much like me, is like, I'm pretty much a one-man band. I mean, just to peel back the curtain a little bit, when I do Man to Men, I know what I'm good at and what I'm not. What I hate doing is editing. Yeah. It just drains me. When I was a broadcast student, I hated going into the editing bay. So that there is no faster way to just kill my energy for a project. I can muscle through and get it done, but I'm not skilled at it. So I've got to find somebody who can help with that. Also, it's like this is not my day job as a podcast host. So I need to be able to come in, schedule with the guest, push record, and then send it off. I would say if you don't have any help right now, and I think you might, you have somebody who does your editing.
Yeah, we have someone to production and editing. Yeah.
So find somebody who can do your editing. Shout out Good Podcast Company, who does all of our man-to-man editing. They are fantastic and work with a lot of Christian and nonprofit podcasts. They're fantastic. Worked with these guys for decades, even before we got in the podcast space. So you've got that. I would just find your rhythm. Like, how often do you want to? And is it realistic for you to churn out episodes? And I would just almost do almost like a mind map, honestly. What are the things I want to cover? I've noticed on yours, you cover a lot of your content, both from the classes you teach and the book, which I think is actually really generous, because I'm like, ooh, is Trevor giving away the store here? Because there's some
give
things,
away a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
sure.
And that's wonderful and generous. And if someone's really smart, they can go and get a lot of that off of your podcast. And I think that's incredible. And that's a great way to build awareness. I've noticed you've had a few guests on. I would maybe have on, thinking about networks, thinking through all the major nonprofits that you interact with on a monthly basis, man. You're in the political space, you're in the charitable space, you're in the Christian nonprofit space, universities. I'm just thinking about who all was in our cohort. I'd reach out and just have them come on and talk about their thing. It doesn't have to be an hour. It could be 15 minutes, because again, when someone's signing on, they're looking for consistency.
Right. And I love your comment on the magazine, because there's definitely things where you'd have like the little sidebar feature that wouldn't appeal to everyone, but a third of your audience might find it interesting, but you find it interesting, but it doesn't quite fit like the overall theme of the show. But that's a way to, at least for me mentally, like reducing the burden of like, this one has to be really good versus like, this could be really good for the Christian nonprofits in the mix, or the more public policy ones that everyone else would find it boring, because public policy to a lot of people is boring, but for a subset of our listeners, public policy
people will love it.
Right, exactly. Know? So looking at it like through that, not that it needs to be good for everyone every time. It still should be high quality, but better frequency.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that'll just show like, hey, Seven Figures puts this out on a regular basis. And I know I can trust them. So, and then you kind of become, let's see, there's another nonprofit kind of development centered podcast. I won't name them, but they're super spotty, and that may just be what they can do, but their episodes are kind of few and far between. And I'm kind of thinking this kind of feels like a bit of a side project for you guys. And it's usually pretty interesting when it downloads. But if you're more regular, you'll just get my attention. Sometimes I forget I even subscribe to it. You don't want people to forget that. Even if they don't listen to the whole thing, you want to make sure that they're checking in with you on a regular basis and they've got a reason to. That'd be my main feedback for you, man. Because I look forward to when that little green 7 shows up. I'm happy to see it. And that's the feeling you want.
All right. Well, you've convicted me. I'm going to get regular on this. You can, you'll see it when you go 6 months from now when you look at it.
See it as nothing but encouragement, man. Like right. You have a real gift for this. You really do. Like you are an incredible coach in this line, because you take the ickiness of fundraising that most people feel, even like good people who could tell you why we have to fundraise. You just help kind of not even smooth that over, but you move it off the table and you invite people into something, that's just way deeper and more meaningful for them and for the world. I mean, that's your special gift. I think the world needs more of Trevor Bragdon using his special gift. Your podcast can be a part of that.
Okay. Wow. Well, thank you. It is the thing I find the most fun, though, is helping people find the words to talk about the work that they're doing.
Yes.
Because it's cool when we talked about this on our podcast appearance on your show. It's amazing when people who are doing great work and like really into the details of the business and know how to do it well, but haven't figured out fundraising, and then they figure it out and then really start to grow because they've already been doing great work. They've just figured out the sales side of it, the fundraising side.
Yeah. I'd be interested too, man. Is like, I don't know. Again, you could creatively figure this out, I think, but I'd be interested in like maybe one of those sidebars or one of those semi-regular features would be like, hey, we're going to have a workshop. And almost like you do in the cohort is that, hey, we're going to spend 15 to 20 minutes talking with a nonprofit leader and asking them questions and kind of doing some live coaching, if you will, I
Sure.
think
That'd be fun.
that better promotes what you do. It shows your special gift and how you guys just really, I think, found something with Seven Figure and just what you guys are doing. But it also is of great value to the rest of us because it'll be a reminder if we forgot, and it'll be an invitation to excellence for the rest of us who maybe haven't interacted with you before.
Oh, that's a great idea. And it's always sometimes easier to see like mistakes people make that we're making ourselves, but it's hard for us to identify them. We
Absolutely.
hear it and we're like, oh, I do that all the time. It's like when you were talking about podcasts being infrequent, and then I was feeling convicted. That's awesome. Well, we love to leave the show. I know we're at time here with a challenge to our audience. Like, what's one thing that they can do as fundraisers after listening to the show? What would you challenge them to do from this so they can take action from what they've learned today?
What is the podcast that you want to listen to that doesn't exist in your space? Go create that. That's what I would say. If you're interested in it and you're thinking, man, this just doesn't seem to be out there, maybe you're the person or the organization to bring some of that into the world. You know, maybe that's part of why God's placed you where you are. That would be my encouragement. And I don't mean just like light encouragement, like you got this. I mean, like this might be something that God's given you a talent and heart and passion for, unlike anyone else. Why would you not want to go share that with a wider audience? Podcasting, it does take a little work, but not as much as like flying all over the country to talk to maybe 100 people when you could talk to thousands through a podcast episode that took you an hour to do. So that'd be my challenge is what's the thing that you are talented at, you're passionate at, that you need, that you think we need more of in this world? Tell us about it. Get booked as a guest, go pitch a podcast, or come up with a plan. What's going to be your rhythm for getting that story out into the world? And I guarantee you, someone's going to find it and like it.
That's such a great answer. And I love the creativity of it because everyone probably has something in the back of their mind they immediately went to when you just said that. So explore that idea. Whatever just popped in your mind listening to that, go explore it. Maybe it's not the right one, but a version of that's probably the right idea.
Yes. I mean, God has made each and every one of us incredibly unique in the history of the universe. The things that he's given you are also that mix of who you are and what you're passionate about. You're going to find further connections if you can share that. And I think one of the cool things about where we live just in space and time is it's never been easier to reach out to more people. So I'll leave that to you and just try to put some courage in your heart, dear listener, to go make the thing that you want to listen to and be a part of.
That's great, Jared. Well, if people wanted to reach out to you because they heard you on this podcast, wanted to give a gift to BYX, how do they find out about you and how would they make a donation?
Oh, that's great. Thank you for that. They can find everything about BYX at byx.org. That is our Greek letters, Beta Upsilon Chi, transliterated to look like a BYX .org. And then you'll see an easy button on there as far as give. You can find out more about Man to Men there on the front page. It's all right there. We've tried to make that a one-stop shop. You can read stories about our guys, just what's happening in BYX across the country. That'd be the main place. Yeah, byx.org.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Jared. This has been a wonderful interview. I've learned a ton myself, and hopefully our guests are going to take action with this and find new donors, but also connect deeper with the donors that you have by starting and using a podcast. So thank you, Jared. Been great talking with you.
You bet. I look forward to listening to some of those new podcasts.
Thanks for listening. To learn more about seven-figure fundraising and our training, visit sevenfigurefundraising.com. Finally, if there's one person you know would benefit from hearing this episode, please take a minute and share it with them. Thanks.